This place is mine now. My daughter told me with a smile that sounded almost friendly. You can still come by. Just call first. She said it the night before I was supposed to move into what I considered my very first real home. The only place I'd ever bought on my own terms. I stood on the porch clutching grocery bags, staring at my family stretched across the sofa I hadn't even unwrapped yet. Abigail spoke as though she were casually arranging brunch seats, not staking a claim. Greg, her husband, didn't even rise, just lifted his beer and smirked. It makes sense, Mom. That phrase again. For 40 years I'd bent myself into sense. Making do, making peace, making room. When Abigail's marriage almost collapsed 3 years earlier, I opened my tiny bungalow without a second thought. When their stay dragged on, I adjusted. When Greg came back, I bit down on my unease. Always giving, always silent. But this was supposed to be mine. I had sold my old house, combined my savings, Harold's insurance, and a modest inheritance from my sister. I hadn't told Abigail the full sum. After weeks of searching, I chose a pale yellow lakeside cottage, 2 bedrooms, a fig tree in the yard, peace written in its walls. And now they'd moved in before me. I placed the bags down, feeling foolish. Who brings food to a house already claimed? Their yoga mat, their placemats, their chargers. I saw their presence in every corner. They weren't helping. They were settling. That night, I drove back to my rental in silence, past familiar shops that suddenly felt like strangers. At home, I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the deed tucked in my purse, my name. My home. Mine. I had imagined tea by the porch, Harold's photo by the fireplace, evenings with the lake breeze. Instead, I was a guest in my own life. But something in me shifted. Not rage, not yet, something older. A voice I had long buried enough. The next morning, I called a locksmith. When Greg tried to explain it away as family sharing, I told him I had shared for 40 years. This time I wasn't. When the locks clicked into place, I looked Abigail in the eye and said, "You have until 6 to take your things. After that, they stay with the house." She glared, stunned. She wasn't used to hearing no from me. For the first time in decades, I remembered who I used to be. A woman with her own voice, her own will, her own home. "I will," I replied, and then I stepped inside alone, shutting the door behind me. The silence in the house felt heavier than I expected. Not the quiet of night, nor the peaceful hush of reading, but the aftermath of noise. The kind of silence that lingers after shouting, leaving residue on the walls. My furniture was still here, but out of place. The rug I'd bought with my own cash sat crumpled beneath their coffee table. In the guest room, meant for my sewing, Greg's shirts hung neatly, tags untouched. I walked room by room, not cleaning, not yet, but restoring, reclaiming. By the bench near the hall, 2 backpacks remained, one leaking a juice box. The other held a crayon sketch of a beach house, 4 stick figures, a dog, our new home, written in a child's hand. I sat staring at it. They truly believed this was theirs. Not out of malice, but assumption. Years of me yielding had taught them it was safe to keep taking. That was what chilled me most. No trickery, no fight, just expectation. I folded the drawing and tucked it away, not for nostalgia, but as proof. People will build their futures on your silence until you speak. At 5:42 p.m. the bell rang. Abigail stood there, face arranged in polite control. "We'll take only essentials now. The rest tomorrow." "That's fair, isn't it?" "No," I said. Her expression cracked. "You'll take it all by 6. "That's what I told you." 18 minutes. She glanced back at Greg, waiting near the car. "Do you even hear yourself, Mother?" "You're impossible now." "Yes," I said evenly. "You should try it." She turned, tight-lipped. They came in twice, carrying boxes, silent. The children stayed in the car, eyes glued to their screens, unaware, or perhaps storing the memory for later. That was fine. Let them forget me. But remember this lesson: you cannot keep what was never yours. At 6:05 they were gone. The house was mine again. No victory song, just quiet. I put water on for tea, only to discover the tin missing. They'd taken that too, along with the good mugs. I laughed softly at the absurdity, then grabbed my keys and walked. The neighborhood greeted me with trimmed porches, wind chimes, flags fluttering. Women traded words across hedges, a man unloaded groceries. Normal life, undisturbed. At the end of the street, the lake shimmered in evening light. I sat there with my hands in my pockets. Not peace, not yet, but close. Tomorrow would be for lawyers. deeds and wills. Tonight no one asked me for anything. Tonight I belonged to myself. At dawn I rose not from routine but because my body refused to sleep longer. I made coffee with the French press they'd overlooked. The silence felt different now, lighter, rightful. I listed tasks on a yellow pad: lawyer, utilities, bank accounts, groceries, somewhere between will and bread. Tears came. Quiet, steady tears I let dry on their own. By 8, I had called Harold's old lawyer. He remembered me kindly. After hearing my story, he reassured me the deed was mine, the locks changed, my rights intact. Families, he said, sometimes use charm as a crowbar. I smiled at that truth. Later, I stopped by the police station, left a quiet record of the intrusion. The young officer nodded seriously. Family or not, boundaries are boundaries. His words stayed with me. That evening, tea in hand, I sat on my porch watching ducks drift across the lake. Abigail's car slowed outside, lingered. She stared, waiting for me to come out. I didn't. After 2 minutes, she drove away. I knew the guilt campaign would begin soon. I was ready. That night, I opened a drawer of old papers: tuition checks, medical bills, Greg's failed business loan, decades of money given without return, without thanks. I didn't regret the giving. I regretted my silence. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I'd start a new file with only my name on it. The next day, Abigail called. Her voice was coated in control, like perfume covering rot. "We should meet," she said, suggesting the kids come too. "No," I told her. "Just you and Greg." 10 o'clock. The following morning, they arrived dressed for a performance. They sat at my kitchen table, acting solemn, speaking of misunderstandings. I stayed standing. The house was mine, and this time, I wasn't yielding. I didn't, I said firmly. Greg hesitated. "Well, maybe we didn't handle it right, but our intentions were good. You moved into my home without asking," I replied. "We thought you'd be glad." Abigail cut in. "To be near the kids, to have family close." I looked at her. "You'd already unpacked, claimed rooms, even changed the Wi-Fi password. Then you said, 'This is ours now.' Do you remember saying that, Abigail?" She dropped her eyes. "I do," I continued. "And you need to hear me clearly. I am finished being convenient, finished staying silent, finished letting myself be used. You took and I allowed it, and that's my mistake. But this house, it is mine. Not shared, not borrowed, mine." Greg started to protest, but I raised my hand. "This isn't a debate." Abigail's mask slipped. "So what now? You're cutting us off." "No," I said. "I'm drawing a boundary. You may visit if invited. You may call. But I won't bankroll your life anymore. And I won't apologize for living mine." Greg scoffed. "We never asked for handouts." I pulled a folder from the drawer, dropped it on the table. "Every check, every transfer, every time you leaned on me. That's charity, whether you admit it or not." The neither of them touched the folder. They left without hugs, without words. Just silence, the silence that comes after truth. The house felt larger once they were gone. The hardest part wasn't the confrontation. It was the quiet that followed. Days felt shapeless. You make coffee, wipe down already clean counters, wait for the next storm, but none came. Abigail didn't call. Greg didn't text. Nothing. It might have been easier if they had shouted, accused me, tried to make me the villain. At least then I could have pointed to their rage and said, "That's why it had to end." Instead, they left like cowards, carrying their entitlement with them. The next morning, I called the utility companies. Every account changed, every password updated. The woman on the phone asked, "Would you like to add a family member as backup?" "No," I said. "It's recommended for emergencies." I've had enough emergencies. Later, I opened the mail. One letter from the bank, one from a church I hadn't been to in years, and one addressed to current resident. A glossy brochure from the neighborhood OA, welcome packet event calendar, a friendly note signed by Karen L. Something about the name made me laugh. Karen L. sounded like the type who organized potlucks with a stopwatch. I'd been a teacher for 40 years. I could handle a Karen. I folded the paper and set it aside. Maybe I'd show up to a porch night. Maybe not. But I liked having the choice. That evening, I walked by the water. The lake caught the fading orange light. Children biked around the bend. A man in a straw hat fished by the bank. I paused, not because I cared if he caught anything, but because it reminded me of Harold. When I came home, The porch light was glowing. For the first time, it felt like a welcome back, not to them, not to the past, but to myself. Then I noticed something. The doormat was slightly off-center. I hadn't left it that way. Heart thudding, I opened the door carefully. The house was untouched, except for the dining table. On it sat a plastic bag. Inside, 2 framed photos, a set of keys, and a sticky note. "You forgot these." The photos I kept, not as forgiveness, but as history. The keys and note went straight to the trash. The next day, I visited my lawyer. He had prepared documents, ownership declaration, deed copies, notarized statements, airtight proof that the house was mine alone. "Do you want to press further?" he asked. "No, she won't come back directly. That part is over." "And your will?" "I want to change it," I said. "No inheritance for her. Instead, a fund for women over 60, women who gave everything and were left with nothing." His pen paused. "I was a teacher. I've seen it too often. And beneficiaries. My granddaughter. The youngest. If she needs help, she'll have it. But not through her mother." By noon it was done. Legally, financially, emotionally. A wall between me and the past. But Abigail wasn't finished. Not yet. Every document on file confirmed I was the sole owner. Any claim otherwise would be treated as harassment. The letter I signed off on was precise, firm, and unapologetic. I approved each word. The house was silent, the lake outside unmoving. Morning light slipped through the curtains, scattering soft patterns on the floor. I hadn't spoken to Abigail in weeks, hadn't seen my grandchildren in longer. Of course it hurt, but not enough to make me return on her terms. She didn't want healing. She wanted me quiet, and I had no intention of loving that way anymore. I sealed the envelope, left it at Luone's office, and went to lunch alone at a small Italian cafe. The checkered tablecloths reminded me of the ones I used to sew when Harold worked late shifts. The waiter asked if I needed a table for 2. "No," I said. "Just me." His smile told me that was enough. When I got home, a parcel was waiting on the porch. Brown wrapping, no sender. I opened it carefully. Inside was a scrapbook. The note was in Abigail's hand, shaky but familiar, from the kids. I didn't help them. The book was filled with construction paper, stickers, photographs of birthdays, concerts, beach trips, captions in blocky handwriting. "Grandma makes the best toast." "Grandma helped me spell chrysanthemum." "Grandma let me cry when I was scared." Near the end, 2 sentences stood alone in pencil: "We miss you." "Are you mad forever?" I closed the book and wept, quietly, like unearthing sorrow long buried. I didn't regret drawing boundaries, but I did regret that they had to carry the weight of conflict. Children don't understand fault. They only feel the chill when a door shuts. That night I wrote, not to Abigail, but to Ellie and Max. "Dear Ellie and Max, thank you for the scrapbook. It's the most beautiful thing I've held in years. I read every page. I remember every moment. I'm not angry with you. I never was. Sometimes adults lose their way and forget how to speak to one another. They make mistakes. I've made many, but loving you has never been one of them. This house is quiet but not sad. You'd like it. I planted herbs and stitched new curtains. The lake is as pretty as ever. I'm not ready for visits yet, but you can always write. I'll always write back. Love, Grandma." I mailed it the next morning, double-stamped, just in case Abigail tried to interfere. Later, Rosa and I visited the garden center. I bought soil pots and a wind spinner shaped like a heron. She teased me about adding lawn flamingos. "Never," I said, and we laughed. That night, for the first time in years, I didn't dream about courtrooms or confrontations. I dreamed of the lake, the porch, and children's laughter echoing faintly in the distance. The next day, I discovered a voicemail. Her voice, measured, careful, filled the room. "We got your letter." Max read it at the table. Ellie cried. Greg stayed quiet. "They're asking questions I can't answer. I don't know how to fix this anymore. If you ever want to talk. We're here, no demands, no threats, just words." Still, I didn't call back, not out of anger, but exhaustion. I needed my own ground before stepping into hers again. September settled gently. Warm afternoons, cool mornings. I wrapped myself in the gray shawl May once gave me and remembered her saying, "Some things aren't just for warmth. They're reminders you're still here." Rosa dropped by with cookies and a seed catalog. When I admitted my daughter had called, she asked, "Did she apologize yet?" I shook my head. Rosa bit into a cookie. Figures. We smiled, though mine was thin. She wants to skip over everything, I confessed. Rosa nodded. People like that count on your memory wearing out. Don't let it. That evening, I made lentil soup, sat at the table, and wrote another letter. This one to myself. Dear Martha, you were right. You chose the harder path, not from spite, but from clarity. You don't owe softness where only stones were given. You are not cruel. You are a woman who finally chose herself, and that is sacred. I tucked the note into my journal. That night, I walked to the dock, whispered Harold's name into the night, and felt no heaviness. Just presence. By mid-September, anger had drained from me. I wasn't rehearsing speeches anymore. I wasn't waiting for letters or bracing for Greg's arrival. Slowly, echoes were replaced with new voices, like Ellie, an elderly neighbor who once danced in ballrooms. We shared coffee and brittle laughter about the way women like us kept invisible ledgers. Not of money, but of what was given and what was taken. Days later, a card arrived from my granddaughter Ellie. Hi, Grandma. We miss you. My teacher says your name is beautiful. I hope you are warm. Just a few words, but proof that love survives detours. I answered that night, telling her about the ducks by the porch and offering to let her name one. I didn't mention Abigail or Greg. I wasn't ready, maybe never would be. At a community fair that weekend, strangers offered me kindness, compliments, invitations. For once, I wasn't invisible. Someone even said, "Good for you." That night, I realized the house was no longer a trophy of survival. It was simply home. Then came the rain, light, steady, like the lake was breathing. Abigail pulled up alone. She lingered in the car before stepping into the drizzle. No umbrella, just her thin cardigan and practiced composure. "You're not going to invite me in?" she asked. "No," I replied. She nodded. "I don't want to fight." "Neither do I." She admitted she thought silence would make things easier. I told her it wasn't the same as giving me no say. She handed me an envelope. "A list of everything you gave us." I finally counted. For once, she didn't look like someone in control. She looked like someone tired of pretending. "I didn't come to win," she said softly. "I already lost. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand." "Understanding isn't change," I reminded her. She nodded. "I know." She said the children cherished my letters. That nearly undid me, but I held steady. "I won't be your backup plan anymore," I said. "I understand," she whispered. There were no grand apologies, no hugs, just rain between us. Two women bound by love, fractured by years, standing in a quiet truth that neither could fully mend. She finally said, "I should go." And I let her. "You should." She walked back to her car, opened the door, then hesitated. "I was wrong," she admitted over her shoulder. "Not only about the house. About you. I thought you'd always be waiting." I replied, "until I wasn't." Then she left. I didn't cry. I went inside, boiled water, and made myself tea. At the window, I opened the envelope she had given me. Inside was a neatly typed list, line after line: 2007 private school tuition, 280 2012 car down payment, 3,500 2015 emergency dental, 940 2020 mortgage bridge loan, 15,000, more than 30 entries in total. At the bottom, one line written by hand: "This is what I took. I can't return it, but I can stop asking for more." I folded the list and placed it in the same drawer as the scrapbook. The children's notes, and the letters I'd never sent. Not because I was ready to forgive, but because I no longer needed to prove anything. My silence was no longer a form of payment. It was peace. Silence takes getting used to. At first, it stings. Like lowering the volume on a life you kept noisy so you wouldn't hear your own thoughts. You miss the chaos, the constant needs dressed up as affection. But in time, the quiet changes. It becomes clarity. The morning after Abigail's visit, I woke without hollowness. I didn't wait for the phone. I didn't listen for her car. I brewed tea, opened the windows, and breathed in the lake air after rain. The air was different, or maybe I was. The days unfolded gently. I reorganized the pantry, planted fall crocuses, and picked up a mystery novel from a church sale, a light-hearted one, about a nosy librarian with too many cats. Nothing borrowed. Nothing pressing. Ellie, the elder neighbor, invited me to her quilting circle. I hadn't sewn in years. Not since Abigail borrowed the money meant for a new sewing machine to buy a dishwasher instead. But my hands remembered. We sat in a semicircle, coffee cups balanced on folding chairs, chatting over fabric scraps. One woman said, "I just need a corner of the world where nobody needs me to fix them." Heads nodded all around. That evening, I walked the lake path with Rosa. Gravel crunched under our shoes, water slapped softly against the dock. "You look lighter," she said. "I feel it." What changed? I stopped waiting for someone else to listen and started listening to myself. She smiled. "That's a hard turn to make." "Yes," I said. "But it's mine." Back at the house, I sat on the porch until stars pricked through the sky. I thought about Abigail's letter, about years I could never rewrite. The thousands of little ways I'd vanished in my own giving. There would be no perfect reunion. No glossy family photo for the mantel. But there was something better, the steady truth that I had stepped out of the part they wrote for me. I wasn't the grandmother, on call, the emergency wallet, the fallback shelter. I was myself. I was Martha. And I was still here. 2 days later, a letter arrived. This time from Max, written neatly in school, issued blue pen. "Hi, Grandma. I got a B-fuzz on my book report. You'd have liked it. It had pirates, but also feelings. Thank you for your letter. I read it twice. Mom says maybe we can visit in the spring. Is that okay?" I wrote back that night, "Dear Max, a B+ is wonderful, especially on pirates and feelings. You must be braver than I was at your age. I used to hide under the covers if a story got too emotional. Thank you for writing. Spring sounds lovely. Let's say yes for now. A short visit. Just you and Ellie if it works. Bring stories. I'll bring cookies. Love, Grandma." It wasn't forgiveness. It was a beginning, one with boundaries. The next day, I went to the hardware store and ordered a brass nameplate. The man asked, I thought, then said, "Martha Grayson." "Owner." He raised an eyebrow. "Not just your name." "No," I replied. "The rest, too." When it was ready, I fixed it beside the front door, above the house number. It caught the sunlight, subtle, steady. Not a warning, not a dare, just truth. That evening, I unlocked the bedroom drawer filled with old receipts, unpaid debts of love, faded photographs. I laid them out one last time, then lit a fire. One by one, I fed them into the flames. Not in anger, not for revenge, but for release. Each page curled, blackened, and disappeared into ash. With every ember, something inside me loosened, not breaking, but rearranging. When the last paper folded in on itself, I wrapped myself in a blanket and let the quiet settle. It no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like presence, my presence. 6 months have passed. Spring has returned. The lake looks fuller, the trees lean closer to the water, as though testing their reflection. The air carries warmth, not promise, but enough. Max and Ellie visited last weekend. Abigail drove them but didn't come up, just waved weakly from the car window. I didn't wave back. It wasn't cruelty, it was honesty. The children ran up the steps like they'd never been gone. Ellie carried a notebook full of owl facts. Max brought books and a rock he swore was from space. We baked cookies, walked the lakeshore, and played cards. At night, I tucked them into bed and read aloud until their breaths deepened into sleep. In the morning, Ellie looked at me over toast. "You don't look sad anymore," she said. And she was right. Before they left, Max hugged me tight. "I'm glad you didn't move," he whispered. "Me too," I answered. Abigail stayed in the car. I returned the overnight bag without speaking. She looked at me, not expecting an invitation anymore, but hoping for a softer version of me. She didn't find her. That was love, too. The kind that keeps its form, the kind that says, "I will not vanish, even for you." Later, as the ducks waddled by and the chimes caught the breeze, I glanced at the brass plate by the door. It had already dulled in the weather, but the words were still clear: Martha Grayson, owner. That week, Rosa and the others came by with pie and gardening tips. We sat in a circle, no confessions, no tears, just the ease of women who no longer owed proof to anyone. Aging, I realized, isn't about disappearing. It's about becoming exact, like a lighthouse, steady and unignorable. The house feels different now. Not a prize, not a battleground. Simply an extension of me. I don't just live here. I exist here, fully, without apology. And that's what healing really is. Not loud, not dramatic. Sometimes it looks like baking bread on a Tuesday, sitting quietly without loneliness, or saying no and meaning it. Sometimes it's just walking through your home and pressing your hand against the wall, whispering, "This is mine." Not because I need ownership of things, but because for years I didn't even own myself. Now I do. Every word, every silence, every door I choose to open or close. Abigail hasn't asked to come inside again, and I haven't offered. Maybe someday the distance will soften. Maybe not. Either way, I remain alive, steady, exact. Fully mine. If this story finds you, I hope it reminds you it is never too late to take your life back. Not through shouting, not through revenge, but through clarity, dignity, and the kind of strength that speaks once then rests. My story is quiet, but it's mine. Martha,